Hey guys, welcome back to Clatipul. In today's video, we shall discuss the concepts of offer and acceptance in the Indian contract law. An offer is synonymous with proposal. The offerer or proposer expresses his willingness to do or not to do something with a view to obtain the acceptance of the offeree or the proposal. Thus, there may be a positive or negative act to do or not to do something. For example, A makes an offer to sell his book to B. Here, A is proposing to do a positive act of selling to B. Thus, A makes an offer to B. In another example, A offers not to file a suit against B if B is willing to pay Rs 200 to A. In such a scenario, A is offering to not do a certain act in order to obtain the acceptance of B. In this case as well, it is an offer made by A to B. As I have already mentioned, an offer can be made either by an act to do something or not to do something. But how do you convey this willingness? There are two ways of conveying this willingness. An offer can be made by words or by conduct. Now, words could be oral or written. Oral words could include conversation over a telephone or conversation in person, and written words could include letters or telex communication or email. Coming to making an offer by conduct, the parties give out clear signals or signs to make or propose an offer. However, silence can in no manner mean that an offer is being made. So, an offer implied from the conduct or gestures of a party is known as an implied offer. For example, A proposes to sell his property to B through a letter. This is a written offer and also an express offer. What if A proposes to sell his property to B over a telephone call? In such a scenario, it will be an oral offer but also an express offer. In another scenario, if A owns a motorboat to carry people from one shore of Bombay to another shore of Bombay, and he places his motorboat on one of the shores where people can enter and sit in the motorboat, this is an offer made by conduct. By merely placing his motorboat at the shore, A is implying his willingness to carry people from one shore to the other side of the shore. This is an implied offer or an offer made by conduct or through gestures. Let's talk about the types of offers. There are two types of offers, specific offers or general offers. Now, offers could be made to public at large or a large group of people at once. Or, offers could also be made to specific parties or groups of people. In the former case, where the offer is made to public at large or to the general public, it is called a general offer. But whereas, when the offer is made to a specific group of people or to a specific person, it is called a specific offer. Now, the specific offer could be clearly accepted by the party to whom the offer is being made. Whereas, for the general offer to be accepted, it must be accepted by either one or more of the parties. The celebrated case of Carlyle versus Carbolic Smokeball Company is a very good example of what a general offer is and how it is to be accepted. In this case, the patent medicine company had advertised widely to give $100 to any person who contracts influenza after using the medicine in the prescribed manner and for the certain duration of time as prescribed by the company. One of the persons purchased the smoke ball and used it according to the prescriptions and for the same duration of time. And even then, she contracted influenza. And now she claimed her $100 amount from the patent company. Now the company very wisely tried to avoid giving her $100 amount by claiming that the offer was made to the public at large and not to her specifically. In such a scenario, the court held that this type of an offer was a general offer, and by accepting and complying with the directions given in the offer, Miss Carlyle, one of the persons who contracted the influenza, was a valid offeree and she had a valid claim over $100 amount, merely because this was not a specific offer but rather a general offer addressed to public at large. Now, in general offers, it is not necessary for the offerer or offeree to know each other. They could be strangers or they could be known people. The moment the offeree complies with the directions of the offer, he becomes a valid offeree. Now, there are certain essential requirements of a valid offer. There are three such requirements. One of them is that the offer must be made with a view to obtain the acceptance of the offeree. Secondly, the offer must be made with a view to create legal relations between the parties. Thus, any informal or casual offer and acceptance being made would not amount to a valid agreement. Lastly, the offer must be certain or capable of being certain and must be unambiguous and clear in its terms. Let's look at some of the examples of what a valid offer looks like. A offers to sell B 100 quintals of oil. This would not be a valid offer because there is no certainty as to what kind of oil and at what price. The offer is neither certain nor is it capable of being made certain. Thus, this would not be a valid offer. What if A, who is a dealer specifically and only in coconut oil, offers to sell 100 quintals of oil to B? In such a scenario, this would be a valid offer because there is a clear indication that A only deals in coconut oil. Even though the offer here is not certain, but it is capable of being made certain. This is why it would be a valid offer. Now let's discuss the difference between what an offer is and what a declaration to intention of offer is. So a person may make a statement without any intention to create a binding offer. In such a scenario, it will be a mere declaration of intention to enter into an offer rather than an offer itself. For example, N, an auctioneer, advertised to people at large that a certain auction would take place at a certain place. A, one of the people who saw the advertisement, travelled hundreds of kilometers to the place but found that there was no auction taking place. A sued N for wastage of his time and claimed compensation. It was held that N was not liable because it was a mere declaration of an intention to hold an auction rather than an offer itself. Now let's differentiate between an offer and an invitation to offer. For example, a prospectus issued by various colleges for various courses being held in the college to students would not be an offer. Rather, it would be a mere invitation to offer. Now, when a student comes up and fills the prospectus and files an application to get admitted into the college, the student thereby makes an offer and the college, after accepting his application, would be accepting the offer of admission. Here there are three elements. First, the advertisement through prospectus, which is a mere invitation to offer. Secondly, the offer itself through which the student makes an application. And lastly, the acceptance by the college of the offer of application of the student. Similarly, a display of goods in a shop is a mere invitation to offer. You go to the shop and then make an offer to purchase the goods, and the shopkeeper, by accepting your purchase, creates an acceptance of the offer of purchase of goods. So we can clearly say that an offer is an indication of the final willingness of the offerer rather than a mere willingness. So whenever a party shows final willingness to be bound by the offer, if it is accepted, then it would be a valid offer rather than an invitation to offer. Now there is another concept of communication of offer. The offer must be clearly communicated to the people to whom the offer is being made. This is true for both general as well as specific offers. For example, A sent B, his servant, to go find his son who is lost. Now B goes ahead and tries to find the son. Meanwhile, A advertises to the public at large that he will give an award of $100 to anyone who finds his son. B was not aware of such a reward being claimed, but B still found his son and came back to the person who was making the offer. And now B claimed his compensation or his reward. Now A validly claimed that B was not aware of such an offer being made. Even the court held that given that B was not aware of the offer, given that it was not communicated to him, it was not a valid offer and B could not claim his $100 rupees because he found the son regardless of whether there was an offer or not an offer. The offerer cannot put a negative compliance within the offer. For example, the offer cannot say that if you do not revert back to me within 2 days or if you do not tell me anything on this offer, then this would be a valid acceptance. This cannot happen. I cannot go ahead and say that this is an offer from my end. If you are silent for more than 2 days, I will continue to assume that it is accepted from your end. This is not a valid offer and it would be discarded in a court of law. A tender is an offer made as it is in response to an invitation to offer. For example, a hospital invites tenders for supply of goods or medicines. Whoever makes such a tender is making an offer, and the hospital, by accepting such an offer, creates a valid agreement. Now let's talk about specific terms in the offer. Specific terms in the offer, being a part of the offer, must be duly brought to the attention of the offeree. If the terms are not brought to the attention of the person to whom the offer is being made, then the terms would not be taken to be valid part of the contract or the offer. For example, a lady purchases a machine without reading the terms of the offer. There was an exemption clause in the offer which exempted the seller from any liability if the purchase goes bad. Now the machine turns out to be faulty and the lady claims compensation. The court held that there could be no compensation to the lady as she clearly did not read the terms of the offer, where the seller had exempted himself from any liability if the machine turns out to be faulty. Now T purchased the railway ticket. On the face of it, there was no other contractual terms or conditions that T had to read. But on the back of the ticket, there was a clause exempting railways of any liability if an injury occurs to any person purchasing the ticket. Now T gets into an injury and tries to claim compensation. The railway authority claims that they are not liable for the injury because there is a clause that exempts them from liability. However, the court held that there was no attention of T that was brought to the back of the ticket. So since there was no signaling or no attention brought to the back of the ticket, T was not bound by the term and thus T could claim the compensation for his injury. Now let's talk about cross offers. When two parties make offers to each other at the same time, neither of the offers will be a valid offer and neither of the cross offers will be considered to be acceptance of the offer. They would end up cancelling each other. For example, A wrote to T selling 100 tons of oil at 69 rupees each. And on the same day, T wrote to A purchasing 100 tons of oil from A at 69 rupees each. These were called to be cross offers and neither of them created a valid contract.